Welcome in everybody to What Noah Reads. Let's get into it. This is a midweek update. Currently, I am reading this complete collection of the Oz series written by L. Frank Baum. As many of you already know of the movie, The Wizard of Oz. But that's only the first book in the entire collection. The whole collection is now written by him is 14 books. In this fifth book you see right here, there's one included that has Ruth Plumley Thompson wrote it. What's that one called? The Royal Book of Oz. Currently, or today, I am going to read the Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. Last night I just finished Ozma of Oz, so I just finished. There's 3 in each. Like I said, there's 14 written by Baum, but there's that extra one is in the last one. Now, for this whole volume, I bought this a couple years ago, and I'm just now reading it, as many of you can probably relate to. But this whole thing, I recently looked on Amazon. It's about $100. But I believe it is on sale. It should still be on sale for about $60. Now, if you look for each of these books is $19.99, and I believe in Canada it's like $22.99, I believe. So do your due diligence on that if you want to get on that. But what we're going to be talking about right now is this is my midweek update, and I'm also planning on or documenting my journey in keeping a daily consistent reading habit. We're gonna make another video on what I'm using, the apps that I recently got onto. But specifically, let's talk about this entire series. Like I said, I've only gotten through the first 3 out of the 14. I'm still gonna read the 15th one, but I'm really mainly on L. Frank Baum's works. He was working on a bunch. Ruth Plumley Thompson, I believe, I don't know the exact number of it, but past the 14, there's a lot. He wrote a lot of poems. He wrote a lot of in-betweens, but these are the 14 main ones. Now, coming off of Ozma of Oz, I'm just going to give my review. This is one of the best series that I've ever read, and I'm going to tell you why. Of course, this is children's books. But when you hear about fantasy, which is really popping off right now, especially with romantasy, but specifically fantasy and going down to children's fantasy and just fantasy in general, I don't hear many people talking about this series, and I'm wondering why. Is it because a lot of people don't want to read children's books if we're past it? But either way, just off of these first 3. Well, first, I read Ozma of Oz last night. The first 2, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, as everybody knows, and then the second one is The Marvelous Land of Oz. So after those first 2, I thought that not it would be complete, but I thought that the world, even though they have a map, and of course with fantasy, like you have seen, even in the Lord of the Rings, Chronicles of Narnia, you'll see in the beginning of them, all those fantasy ones that are true fantasy have the maps. So it's dealing with world building. But specifically with these first 2, I wasn't satisfied because I was left wanting more. But the third one is when you really start getting into Oz, right? Like I said in my reviews, the first one, of course, that's Dorothy's first journey. The second one, it starts with Tipitarius. He goes on with Jack Pumpkinhead. You introduced to Wally Bug, Scarecrow. The Tin Men are in the second one. The third one, though, Ozma of Oz, that one had the Cowardly Lion. It had the Tin Man or the Tin Woodman. And then you got the Scarecrow. Then Wogglebug wasn't in this one. You got Ozma of Oz. Then you got Glinda the Good Witch, of course. Then you're really Ozma of Oz is going to another land called Ev. That's outside of Oz. And if you're dealing with the books, if you're familiar with the books, or if you're not familiar with the books, there's Oz, who have the Gillikins up top, the Quadlings, where Glinda the Good Witch is. Then you got to the west, you got the Munchkins in Munchkin Land. That's where Dorothy dropped first from the cyclone. killing the good witch of the east. I mean, the bad witch, the evil witch of the east, right? And the Wicked Witch of the West and everything, dealing with that in that one. And then you got to the east, you got the Winkies, right? Now, so far, you've gotten, and this is only just saying, like, just like I said in the back, the second book review of the Marvelous Land of Oz. Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, in terms of the Wizard of Oz, the Wonderful Wizard of Oz, the first one, that's just a small iota of like the entire world that's in, and it just puts you in your realm of imagination, like you're completely locked in. And what's so good about these, especially, and I'm just going off of what I've already read, but specifically I'm going to talk about how L. Frank Baum like pulls you in. His style of writing is like perfect for film because, number one, these are very fast paced. The average out of these three that I've seen, and even going off of the page numbers in the second one, which has the Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. I'm gonna start that today. Try to finish that today. You got the Road to Oz, and then the Emerald City of Oz. Those are all in the second one. Or in the second book, rather. The way he writes is, he does, like, everybody's personalities, of course, are very distinct. And being in the realm of imagination, he also puts humor in there. But his very distinct writing style is he does a lot of callbacks. And a lot of callbacks specifically to people's personalities. So you'll have a certain situation going on, and then it'll all of a sudden be a conversation between the Tin Woodman and the Scarecrow, for example. That was a lot of that. That was hilarious in the Marvelous Land of Oz. But you'll see them. It'll be some situation, and then it'll go right to them, and then it'll call not just on that current circumstance, but it'll call like back to, oh, that's just his personality. This is how he acts. This is how he speaks. And it gives you, I've found myself plenty of time, like, really asking myself, like, why hasn't anybody made either like a mini series or any animation or any movies after? Now, of course, we've seen, a few retakes, but The Wizard of Oz was already done. That's one of the best movies that's ever been made. And it literally, what was that, in 1939, I believe? That's when it came out. But the book was written in 1900. It was first published in 1900. Then you got the second book was in 1904. Then you got the third book, which was in 1907. This man was like cranking them out. But the key thing about it is, like what I said, his distinct writing style. For him to be able to do that, that's a very, how would you say it, imaginative and childlike way of writing. This is why it's perfect fantasy, an introduction to fantasy. And like what I said again, I don't know why anybody never talks about it. They only talk about the first book, and then I've only heard like, oh, everything gets weird after the first one. No, it gets way better. But also the way that he explains is he's a very descriptive author. And of course, for children who are already steeped, like, smack dab in the middle of the world of imagination, how they act, children, right? How we were when we were kids. He writes like very descriptive, to the point to where if you look on Fable, you look on the Story Graph, you look on Goodreads, anybody that has the quote unquote pacing, sorry about that. Sorry about the noise, but anybody that has certain like descriptions of like the pacing of the book, you'll see that these are very fast paced. Like I said, with these books, these are on average like 185 pages each. So in total, it's probably about a little bit under, a little bit over 600 pages for each of these, right? So some novels, right, he's packing 3 into one book. This is why it's perfect if you want to, instead of buying them individually, go ahead and get this. I'm not promoting it, but I'm just saying, do your due diligence and spreading your dollar and spending wisely. But all in all, I'm just gonna say this is a perfect. I'm really like deep in here, and the reason why, another reason why, I've said this in my second video, or about the book, The Marvelous Land of Oz. This series is perfect if you want to get back into reading. It's very fast paced, very easy. It gives you a laugh. It definitely is a page turner. Like I said, it's fast paced, but the character development is very good, especially for children's books. And the world building, despite it being fast paced, despite it being under 200 pages, it's still like, you know exactly like what, like when I gave you the map, like that's just off of reading 3 books. Like in my head, I'm living there. Like Dorothy is my friend, my sister. Ozma, she's my sister, my best friend. Like Tim Woodman, I know him very well. I done dapped him up, fist bumped him, all of that. So the key thing I just want to get across, this is what I'm reading this week. I'm going to give an end of the week update as well as to how far I am. I do want to zip through these, not to rush, but I do have a lot of books on my to be read that are, it's a lot, especially this is springtime. Everybody's alive and, you know, out and about, and also coming up out of winter. You know, we all get the energy of like, man, I want to do this, I want to do this, because it is New Year, right? The life coming out as well. You know, everybody like out of hibernation and everything getting warm. So definitely books, in terms of what I'm doing right now, and especially documenting my daily habit and my reader's journey as well. What I'm reading, updates, what I feel about it. That's what I'm doing. So I'm gonna give y'all an update on Saturday, which is what, I guess 3 days from now. Yeah, 3 days from now. And I'm gonna try to finish the Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz tonight, and I'm gonna give you a separate review on that as well. But y'all stay tuned. Appreciate it.